Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Lawson. I'm host of Signal Over Noise podcast. Today we have Matt Nelson from First Tracks Marketing. Matt, thanks for joining us. How about introducing us to your agency and what it's all about?
Sure. First Tracks Marketing, we specialize in e-commerce design and development, primarily in WooCommerce, which is an e-commerce engine that runs on WordPress. We also architect, strategize, execute, and manage, omni-channel marketing programs for a lot of the businesses that we build solutions for.
Great, great. Tell me about WooCommerce. Why WooCommerce?
So WooCommerce, it's been a journey for us. Lightly, we were one of the early adopters of the software way back in the day. It was actually it was forked off of a extension called Shop, like way back. I think that was like 2011-ish. And we really, at the time we were kind of dabbling in some e-commerce stuff, and we really couldn't find something that we really loved or that we wanted to kind of lean into and really work in depth with, because everything kind of had a lot of kinks and quirks to it that we just didn't want to deal with. And this is like back when, we used to do a lot of Joomla work way back when we first started, and like that kind of fell by the wayside when WordPress upped their game to 3.0.
Early days of e-commerce.
Yeah. So when we were big into Woo themes, and that's what existed prior to WooCommerce, and then Woo themes adopted or forked off of that Shop extension and created WooCommerce, and we were like, oh, well, we really like the theme frameworks that these people make. Let's take a look at what they're doing with this forked project. And we were ecstatic with sort of what we found early on, and we just decided to go all head first into that, and it's been exploding ever since.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm more familiar with something like, maybe I came in a little bit behind you, with Shopify. How does it compare to Shopify, and help me understand the benefits over something like Shopify?
So it's really not, especially today, like the lines between the two options are as blurry as they could be now. Because, if you probably get bombarded from advertising for Shopify all the time about like, you can build your store in your basement in an evening and like make $1 million, and like that kind of glazes over some pretty like critical important things that you may or may not have to do to go from 0 to $1 million in your basement. But the way I describe it to customers, because we work in both, we're agnostic in that sense. But the big difference to me is that, it's not that you can't customize Shopify, but like the more you start to diverge from like how the tools are meant to be used, meaning like adopting their theme and like running off their AI to make customizations within the infrastructure, using extensions that are vetted, within the marketplace, and like not hacking or tweaking anything. Because as soon as you start doing that, things get really hairy and difficult quickly, and quite cumbersome. We've had multiple Shopify client, project platforms that we have inherited from other people, where there's a lot of ideas that get thrown around, like, we want to do this or we want to do that, or like, we really should add this into your checkout sequence, but they'll be like, oh, well, we're using this like special gift ship extension, and we had to like customize a few things, and that affects all of that. So now you're limited by like what other things you can bolt into it, because it's not playing by the rules of how the system is expecting that to work. So that can get really difficult. Whereas with WooCommerce and it's open source, we basically have the freedom to go in and if as long as you understand how the core is like meant to be leveraged, and you do that in a responsible manner, you can still customize that without worrying about like, oh, the next time I go to update this, it's going to like blow up or something's not going to work or whatever.
Right.
There's
Right.
certainly, and I think that goes for both platforms, quite frankly. Like, there's right ways and wrong ways to do everything. Um, we tend to wind up walking into other people's wrong ways more often than not, and then it's just like, well, this really shouldn't be this way, and like, here's how we're gonna need to like redo that. And sometimes you do it, and sometimes they're like, no, we're all right. We'll just live with it for now, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I'm curious this day and age, let's say we're in the WooCommerce environment generally,
mhm.
what would it take from start to finish to go from first discussion to, you know, taking receipts, generally speaking,
So
without too many, special features,
that's
that
a
require.
loaded question.
I know.
Uh,
As I said, I know, but just give
no,
our
no, no.
audience a sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I used to do WordCamps used to be they still do them, and I still attend like the national one they do every year,
Hmm.
which is great. Just for networking and meeting other people that are kind of
Sure.
in the same space and vendors and all that stuff. But I used to do a presentation years ago where we would just go in 45 minutes and like show everybody like you can set a store up from like scratch to like process a transaction in an hour. It's not hard to like spin those parts up, especially if you know which pieces you need, depending on how you want to like fulfill your product, or like
Uh-huh.
how the
Yeah.
product needs to be sold. Is it variable? Are there
Right. Small
customizations, whatever?
catalog, I
Yeah,
presume.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, even if it's big, I mean, we've done stores that have 10 products, and we've done stores that have 700,000 products. It's really just a factor of how you're organizing the information and making it available to the system. We've written cron job imports that run off of
Yeah.
external vendor suppliers and like regularly update product feeds to their direct store for
Uh-huh.
purchase. I mean, and again, that's where like the open source mentality of like how the system itself functions gives you those kinds of ranges of flexibility to do that, which is really
Okay.
powerful depending on what
So
the
it,
need
it's
is.
relatively quick,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I would say that's, Shopify couldn't do any better than that.
Yeah, I would say in that regard they're pretty equal. It's just
Okay.
you'll get more. You'll probably get more of a white glove treatment. Like if you sign up, I mean that's what Shopify is trying to do all the time. Like just sign up for an account, 14 days free, and you can install a theme and like muck around in there and like try to create a product, and like that's all pretty straightforward. And the built-in AI components that they have in that now are phenomenal, and it's makes it very easy to be like, what do I do, or how do I do this, or like where does this go, and like it'll just walk you through it.
Gotcha.
WooCommerce doesn't really have anything like that. I mean, they're getting into the agentic AI, commerce feeds and things like that, which is obviously next layer or level for all of this. Like, how does that content become available for like answers to searches of like, I'm looking for something that, is this color and shape and or weight or whatever. And like for this kind of like, let's say you're looking for like a workout add-on or equipment or something, like how does that go out and find it and be like, oh, here's the product you're looking for, you should buy this.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
that has to do with the underpinnings of like how the infrastructure is written, and then how you're making those feeds available to those large language learning models to process that stuff efficiently. So
So with all this experience, and I saw on your LinkedIn profile, you were also a teacher at one point.
yes.
You, after being a student, so you've seen a lot and thought a lot about this.
Mhm.
So tell me about your agency's process. I assume I'm a new client. and I need a website and I want to sell some stuff.
Um,
Um, do you go for like MVP first, or help me understand your process for getting a site up and sort of evolving it? How do you think about that? How do you share that with a new client?
um, so I like to make sure people understand that, um, we take, the partnership between the businesses that we work with very seriously. And like, we don't like to make assumptions at any level if we can help it. So typically, what we'll do, especially if we're going to get into like a website rebuild with like a company that we don't know or we haven't worked with for any period of time, what we do is we'll start with what we call an opportunities analysis, where the company comes into us and they're like, well, okay, well, this is a situation and what we're dealing with, and we're trying to like grow this, and these are our problems or questions or whatever we're dealing with. Um, it's a we would charge for that off the street. It's $1,000. It's basically like 10 hours of work across our team, and we
Hmm.
prepare basically what turns out to be about a 30-page um, report. We need to get basic access to the website and the admin, and if we can, to like where the domain's registered and what your hosting is, so that we can kind of see everything from all angles, and then be able to basically go through like, what are the extensions that are there, what's the framework that's in place, how is it written, looking at the source code, um, looking at like sales history data, because what we want to really be able to paint is like a more complete picture of like, well, what are your realities, like how much traffic is coming into this thing, how many orders is that resolving, what's the average order look like, what's your conversion rate look like, how does the website feel versus like how does it rank in we use a couple different page speed monitoring tools like GTmetrix and
Hmm.
Pingdom, and
Yeah.
um, uh, Google's page speed analyzer, which is definitely the most stringent of the bunch, um, so that we can kind of compile a full report back and say, okay, well, we had a conversation, we know what you're looking for, we've gotten in and looked at everything, and here's what we know and here's what we see, and then we'll prioritize a series of recommendations off of that, in conjunction, knowing like what they're trying to accomplish and saying like, well, here's how we will go about this, from a priority standpoint, to help you get to where you want to be. Sometimes that recommendation is you need to just like bin this thing and like we're gonna rebuild it, and other times it's just like, all right, well, here's how we're gonna change these parts out, replace them with this, rewrite this part, maybe we'll just redesign a couple sections. It really has a lot more to do with like how it was architected in the first place from whoever was working on it previously. um, that tends to be one of the biggest wild cards in this, regardless of what system you're working in, because it's not like, it's kind of like car repair where like you go into the shop and they're like, well, I got to look under the hood and like you can tell me what sound it's making, but I don't know until I get in there and see what's going on. And then it's like, well, I don't know what knucklehead worked on this before, but there's a whole bunch of weird things and there's duct tape everywhere and like this is about to fall off, like sometimes that happens. um
Sure.
but it's not,
That
but the
sounds like a
thing,
site I built.
yeah. The thing that's but really different when it comes to web development is it's not nearly as standardized. So it's not like, well,
Uh-huh.
you have this model of car and like these are the parts that you can put on it.
Right.
Websites are so much more broad, and they're like, you think about how many extensions like are in the WordPress.org repository alone, not just like what's available for WooCommerce. And sometimes we'll get into people's sites and they've got like 90 plugins, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, that is like insane. Like our biggest sites that are doing millions of dollars a year in transactions, they maybe have 40, and
Mm.
that's even like, it's getting to be too much. Because you got to support all that, and that's, again, when we're
Right.
talking about differences of platforms, there's an area that like Shopify is a little bit easier on, your stress level, or you don't need to have someone necessarily in tow to like manage that because it's part of the infrastructure, and they're just maintaining that for you in the background, which we don't mind either. I'm like, that's one less thing we have to worry about, but that's why they're so stringent and strict about how you implement things, because that just needs to work, you know?
So you go through an opportunity analysis. I presume you don't get that far if it's not a good fit, but you could go through that and say, hey, maybe we're not a good fit, or
Yep.
what you want is not something we're comfortable,
Hmm.
philosophically with delivering because it won't be stable. You won't like it, believe it or not. And
Yep. Yep.
if you're hell bent, okay. So let's assume do the opportunity analysis. You both agree on the objectives and the outcome.
Mhm.
Good fit, from philosophical, from a person at chemistry point of view.
Yeah.
Then what's next? You just
So,
dive in and do the work, or is there another step?
so what the way we present this to people is as I, just from what am I really getting into kind of standpoint. I always tell them, like, this is what it costs to do this. We'll do it. We'll talk to you. We'll explain everything. If you at that point are like, this doesn't really sound what I want, or it's not really like for us right now, the only thing you're really committing to is the cost of that report. And so you can take that, it's yours. You can shop it around to whoever you want. That's totally up to you.
Right.
But if we do go forward and we do get into the work that we're recommending, then we waive the cost of that up front, just to say, like,
Okay.
in good
Good.
faith and
Good.
creating a solid relationship, and we're happy to have a new partner on
Good.
board, and that's all good. So what we
Nice.
do from that point is that we sort of go back to the priorities that we set forth, and we say, okay, well, if it's a full blown rebuild and redesign, that process is a little different, where we can more easily just be like, all right, well, here's what the fixed cost is going to be for us to like meet with you, plan your architecture, review everything that's there, do a full wireframe. Sometimes we do that, sometimes we don't. It depends on how set the branding and style is for the site. Like, usually bigger,
Right.
more established brands are like, well, this is our look, and you can work within that, versus like, we're looking for something totally new. It depends on how rangy that is. But we'll set a fixed cost for that, and we use Figma for all of our design prototyping. There's a little bit of like light interactivity in there, which is nice because we do everything mobile first, so you get views at all sizes.
Yeah.
You can
Right.
experience the site on your phone. You get a feel for it, from a much more tactical level. And then we can add in things like, well, what happens when I click on the menu and it flies out, and what does that look like? And like, you get a
Right.
very real feeling mock-up that you're able to make very quick decisions on, about like, I like this or I don't like this, or like, oh, we forgot to add this thing. And then that, as part of our process of how we work, is the blueprint that we're then delivering to our development team, and what they're using to write all the code and math to like manage the different viewport sizes and everything. So there's a lot of efficiency, built into that process for us, as something we've developed and refined, especially over the
Uh-huh.
last 5 or 6 years, because you need to be efficient with this stuff, especially today. And
Yeah.
AI is certainly helping us with that, especially, but actually from all sides: content, writing, creative, brainstorming, image production. Like, it's fantastic. The amount of extra
Well,
like
yeah.
iterations and versions of stuff
Well,
that
we'll
we're
get
able to
into
do.
that.
Yeah.
I want to hold that
Yep.
topic for a conversation in and of itself.
Hmm.
So, talk to me about your biggest challenge in 25. Let's think back of, let me talk, not challenge. Let's talk victories. Let's talk wins. What would you say your biggest win in 25 was?
Um, you know, it for me, um, in terms of the agency last year, like, we made some big decisions to make a significant pivot in terms of our operating infrastructure, systems. And it's something we had been talking about for quite a while, and it's like it's such a was such a monumental mammoth undertaking to like, we've been on the same like project management system for
Hmm.
14 years, and we successfully migrated off of that into a whole new operating infrastructure for our business, which it took it took me about 8 months to like get it there. And I didn't do it by myself, and there was like help from other people within the team, to facilitate and test things. And but the amount of like moving parts and like connections and the process flow of like where everything needs to go and like what we need to be able to do and like trying to think through all that and like beta test it all and be able to finally like pull the trigger and like facilitate that transition. And we're still dealing with some of that now, but now we're getting to the point where like we're just seeing more and more pathways open for like better efficiency and like better ways to work as a team within our group. And that's a big it's very exciting for me because um there's a big first step, because as I'm looking at where I'm at in my career at this point and how much time I have left in this business, like I need to switch focus to how do I build the system better so that we can potentially look to scale in the coming years. And if somebody's coming in being like, well, how does this work, and be like, well, this is exactly how this works, and like here's how this is all connected, and like these processes are what makes this go, not me. you know. So,
So, what's your advice to another, agency founder who's going through that same thought process in terms of, what you learned? What advice would you give them?
oh man, I would I would say, and I fought this. When I first got into this, I was like, I'm just gonna like we're gonna have an agency and we're gonna do creative work all day, and like that's gonna be super fun, and lots of like variable work, and it's not going to be boring, and those are all true. That's still true. um, but what I fought for the longest time, was process of like documenting things and having like procedures and like requirements, um and it sounds super boring and annoying even when I say it, but it is so critical to like every aspect of like running a good business. um
Yeah.
and it starts first and foremost, in my opinion, with the expectation management of the team that you have. And so we definitely ran into some tricky situations and some headaches along the way, because we I wouldn't say we were the most organized with that, in the early days. And we had a lot of people who are still with us who have been with us for 10 plus years, and now we're trying to like install and run it that way. And some people are like, what's this all about? And I'm just like, well, it's nothing big brotherish. It's just like this is how you run a good business, like.
Right. How do we go from 10 to 20 to 40 to 80?
Right, right. And it's
Yeah.
just you again, the system work that we've done to kind of like refactor and rethink like how we work is a big part of that. Like we were running into a lot of situations with our previous system where like people could log into their project spaces and like post a comment or request help with something because it's like a Facebook wall basically. But the problem was is that, like that comment would just like show up there, and we had all these like crazy email filters created to make sure like, and this was obviously contingent that the people on our team had actually gone through the steps to set up the filters the way we needed them to. But it would then like show up in your inbox like somebody mentioned you, so you should like get back to them about that. But there was no like deadline or status or like anything that or way that you could go in and be like, what are all the things that people are saying that are like assigned to me that I need to deal with? And when you're dealing with like 100 plus clients, that becomes a problem because inevitably stuff falls through the cracks, you know? So now we're fully integrated with like a support ticket system structure. Nobody has to log into anything anymore. You just shoot an email to our support address and it just like sets up a new ticket and somebody triages it. It gets assigned to someone, it gets a due date, it has a status. Like everything is assessed from anything client related communication wise is coming into that like central hub now. And it's been, when did we start that? November this past year. November, December, January, February, March. Yeah, it's been 5 months. That hasn't happened one time since we started that, where people are like, what's up with this, or if we do something and we close it and it's done with, and then they go back and like respond to that thread, it reopens it and you're like, oh, I need to address this thing again, and like everyone knows what's going on, and I'm just like, success.
Great. So maybe you mentioned it, maybe it's self-evident, but how does that set you up for success or growth in the future?
So it's all been more connected to the idea of like, when we look at like our book of business, and I'm talking to my leadership team, and I'm like, well, we've been kind of at a 2 million-ish annual gross revenue for a couple of years, and I'm just like, well, if we wanted to say we added another 500,000 or 750,000 a year, like what are we really talking about now? Because when you look at it as a whole, it's like, well, it could be like one of these huge clients or like a couple of these smaller ones, but I'm just like, think about how much work is associated with that, and then it's a handful more people regardless. But it's not just that, it's like all the extra stuff that's going to happen because of that, the document organization, the tasks, like the deadlines, the communication that's going to be happening. Like, how do we keep track of that as well? Like, how does that work? And so that was a big driver behind finally deciding to just be like, all right, we got to do this, because we can't afford not to, because we're just at a point where we've reached kind of a critical mass with the amount of band-aids we put in place to try and make all these things work together that just aren't meeting the needs of like where we want to go. So it's been an eye-opening process, and it's revealed a lot of different layers of things at a variety of different levels, that have needed a lot of attention that weren't getting it before. So it's been a very eye-opening experience.
So as the CEO, how's the business changing?
I mean, I think in terms of like our business has been we've been continuing to kind of dial in what we do, I think, pretty well. Like we've really solidified. I feel like we've solidified other than what we've changed for ourselves internally, our like operating tech stack for the customers we serve has become very um, set, and in a good way, where we really genuinely like the tools that we use now, and aren't, I mean, early on, I mean, I would say probably maybe 8-10 years ago, we were still early enough where it's like, well, maybe this is the right thing, and like maybe we'll use this for automation, and maybe we'll use this for email, and like you're just we'll use a little bit of everything because we don't want to like close the door to anyone. Like, you use MailChimp, fine, we'll work in MailChimp, or whatever. We don't do that anymore. We're WordPress and WooCommerce and Shopify, and the WooCommerce and Shopify works for us because of the extended tech stack that's around it with Klaviyo Tag Manager, Google Analytics, like the agency analytics is what we use for like our dashboarding and reporting tool set. All that works together very seamlessly. So our ability to, hop in more quickly to be like, or if they're not using that, to be like, well, that's great that you're on constant contact, but we don't like that or work in it because it doesn't do the job and the data is not crisp enough, and it doesn't have as much flexibility for the kinds of things that we
Uh-huh.
know are successful. So it's usually not and it's not hard to shift platforms for those kinds of things, not nearly as much as like depending on how complicated your email program is. But I digress. It's just being more specific about where and who we work with and attracting those people primarily because of who we network with and the partner programs that we're a part of. Like we're a resource to them about, these are the people you want to work with because they do this all the time. They're going to be able to help you figure this out quick.
So what, at the end of the day, makes your agency unique from other agencies of comparable size?
I would say, what makes us, well, I mean, our people obviously are a primary differentiator. Like we have had very almost zero turnover, in our business. So we've got a lot of people who have been, working these systems and programs for 10 plus years now. And we've all been working together for that time. And there's a lot to be said for the real world experience of like what you've seen and what you've done, how you've accomplished it, and all the different kinds of curveballs and twists and turns and things that we've seen that we just save people a lot of headaches and time and money because we're not just throwing stuff at the wall being like, well, here's a new thing. And it's not that we don't welcome new technology. We're just very cautious about making sure that we vet things and we know what to look for, because we've run programs at scale for so many years. And it's a lot of common culprits when it comes to like things when you see things and you're like, oh, that's not going to work, if you're doing 5,000 transactions a month or more, and those are just things that you couldn't know, even as a business owner, and you're like, yeah, we're growing and we're doing, 500,000, or we're getting, just past 1 million, and we want to keep that momentum. It's like, well, even the conversation from 500,000 to 1 million is different dramatically.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So what are the obstacles, the challenges that you think you'll face as you add that next $1 million in revenue?
oh, look, for us personally,
Yeah, for your
um,
agency.
I think the primary challenge will be the continued evolution of sort of the team dynamics and um, you know finding culture is a huge thing for us. I we've sort of been the same. We've been 12, 13 people now for probably 5, 6 years now. Um, and I haven't felt, part of that reason is because I haven't felt like the systems we've had in place have been the right setup for us to be comfortable being like, all right, now we're gonna go after like a whole bunch of new work and try and really add like this extra work, because we haven't up until recently been feeling like we have a good enough um, process and system in place to like handle what we have. Like make sure you do a good. The last thing I ever want to have happen is that we just get too big for our britches, as they say, and then everybody starts to suffer. We're very beholden. The results is everything to our team. Whether that's
Yeah.
the whatever your cost per lead averages you need to maintain, or the amount of leads that you need to get, or the amount of sales, or whatever. Sometimes it's both. Like it just depends whatever the business is. But we try to, and that's why we have the tools and systems in place that we do, because we want to make that as transparent and accessible as possible to everybody at all times, so that if you want to know what's going on and you want to see where we're at, like, you can just simply open your board and be like, where are we right now? Like, like, we're up whatever, or we're trailing like 10%. Are we worried? Like, what are we doing about that? We're meeting,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
let me ask that question head on. As the chief marketing officer, um, what is your biggest stressor?
goals.
Having them or achieving them?
um,
Both.
no, having them is great. Like, you gotta know where you're trying to get to. There's got to be a purpose behind everything, and I'm a big, um, that's sort of what frames all of our conversations. When I sit down with our account managers, and I'm like, okay, well, let's touch base about this client. But we're prepping their notes for them. We got to sit down and, like, where are we? And we're looking, at traffic and sales and conversions and everything. And I'm just like, I always say, like, where we earn our stripes the most is like when stuff doesn't look good. Like, if we're having, I mean, again, I want to keep bringing up the AI stuff, but like the way AI is changing search, and you're getting these zero click models now, where people are just searching for answers and finding it in the snippet, and they're like not clicking through to the site, and they're just seeing the content that you've prepared. Like, that's still valid, but it's not giving you the traffic pass through that you wanted, and it's not creating a session or a potential purchase necessarily. So we're having to deal with a lot of that, explaining the realities of like how the world is changing to people all the time, and just being like, yeah, you're not the only one. And that's also a benefit of
Right.
like having as much client traffic as we
So,
do. So I can be like, it's everywhere, like, I don't care if you're selling retail product or if it's industrial parts, like, it's the same problem.
so yeah. So tell me how lead gen is changing over the last, year. Um,
So I think lead gen or direct sales, it's changing in sort of this, it's similar ways, right? Like, people don't have, and this is just probably true of a lot of things that we're talking about digitally these days. Like, people's attention span and patience for anything really is just a
mhm.
constantly declining factor, right? And now, with how AI is finding its way into everything, like, you don't even search the same way. Like, if I have a question about something, like, what did you used to do? You used to go to Google and be like, what is this? And like, maybe you'd find an article, and then you'd read the article, and then that was traffic and time and whatever. I don't do that anymore. I have Gemini Pro, in my Google Apps for Business, and I'm just like, well, here's something I'm trying to build and what I want to do, and here's the things I want to use. And, it's going out and being like, well, here's how you do that. And the amount of times that it's actually like giving me a URL, like, you should go here and look at this. It's like almost never. It's just like, here's how I'm
Mhm,
going to solve the
mhm.
problem for you. Unless I was specifically asking it, like, go out and like find some websites that are similar that I might want to look at, or, here's some ones that I saw that I think would be good, like, comparative starting points to like generate an interface for, something. It's just, it's it's a totally different landscape. And that's just going to continue to evolve that way. And so big focus for like how we're, not just from an architecture standpoint of like building the backbone of the content itself to be as modernized as possible, so it's digestible and accessible by these, um, AI crawlers, um, is to also then be building content that exists within the application. And it's a different framing of like how you build content. It's like, what are the things that your product solves, and like, how do you reverse engineer that to have a conversation with a customer to be like, what are they thinking about? What are they looking for the solution for? How does your
Right.
product complete that scenario? And that is particularly relevant, especially in the industrial sector. We have a bunch of clients that sell like, HVAC components or, measurement devices and stuff. And I'm like, they are so far behind. That's all we talk about is like, what can we write next? Or like, how does this, you know, uh, scanner, what does it measure? And like, how does that work? And like, what kinds of things do people measure with it? And like, let's write some content and create some, messaging
Right.
that is all about that. And it's just like, you're not going to see anything like immediately from that, but you need to be a
Right.
part of the conversation.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's
So,
great. That's great. So if you could fix one thing, change one thing about how the agency operates, to really, ignite it, what do you think that would be?
oh, so many things. Hmm, to really, really
Yeah, I
ignite
mean,
it. Um,
yeah,
you know, yeah, I don't know if this is probably what you expect me to say, but um, I, you know, truthfully, like in terms of our business, right? We, I haven't, I haven't really ever marketed heavily for what we do, and so you're kind of laughing,
Oh my gosh.
but we,
It's the
but we,
cobbler's story. The
yeah, no,
cobbler's kids
it
have
is,
terrible shoes.
no, it isn't, it isn't.
Everybody's got great shoes, but the cobbler's kids.
Oh no, I think
No,
it's
okay. So you say you haven't really marketed well.
no, well,
What
not, it's
what
not
might
that
that look like?
it's.
If you could call a timeout and
Mhm.
had 3 months to put something together, what would that look like?
I would go back to our website again, and it needs a little bit of a refresh. I want to, something that's a focus for me this year is I want to be
I'm not
creating.
saying I agree by nodding. I'm just
I was like, well, I hit the nail on the head. No, it it's it's not that the content is good, and it works fine, but I think for where we're at right now and the kind of work that we're doing, like it's not necessarily the most accurate representation of like what we're capable of. Because you're right, it is the cobbler's kids on their shoes kind of thing. Like we're always last on the list. Um,
said it.
yeah,
I
no,
didn't.
no, no, no. It is totally true. I but like there's things about that in general where like I'm trying to be more proactive for myself to like make sure I'm doing a case study once a month. I'm leveraging AI this year to like help with our content strategy and schedule so that I'm
Right.
not relying on the team to help contribute to that as much. They're welcome to if they want to, but I want them to be focused on the work and the stuff for our customers that they're doing.
So
So,
do you have an active pipeline,
yep, yep,
process for your own agency?
yes,
Generate.
that was the huge. So, and a lot of that for us is like front loaded at the beginning of the year because we're like renewing contracts and things like that. So it's sort of like, take care of your house first and see where you're at,
Right.
and then look
Mhm.
at like, well, what do we have available now, depending on how that went, and then what are we trying to sort of fill in. So,
Mhm.
the remainder of the year becomes sort of like, all right, well, here's what we have kind of room for right now, given where we're at, and that's going to be a really good opportunity for me this year, which I'm really excited about, to take the new systems that we have now and to build out more of an active marketing pipeline for us that's more like outbound, traditional, than what we've had in the past, which has all been like referral based, or, someone gets referred from a partner that we work with, and then they hit our form and they fill it out and ask us, and then we start the process of, getting involved with them, which works great. Our whole pipeline infrastructure now is completely integrated with the entire working infrastructure of the business now, which is phenomenal. So we actually have a bead of like, what's new business versus like new work with current customers that we're working, and that gives us a little bit more of a checkpoint, at any given moment of like, what do we have available or not. I mean, we're basically booking right now for the second half of this year. So anyone I'm
Oh,
talking
that's
to,
terrific.
I'm like, you know, July and on, or anyone that I'm emailing with now, I'm like, 'cause there's always people that are like, well, we're thinking about this, and then stuff happens. And there's a few that I've been talking with that because of the geopolitical climate right now and the cost of oil and
Yep.
travel and everything else, are just like, now we got to put a pin in this stuff and just to wait and see what happens.
Right.
So,
Right. All right. Well, this has been really interesting. I've learned a lot, and that's all I have. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today,
mhm.
and best of luck.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. It was fun to come on and kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
just chit chat about what we got going on. And